Saved from a Fire. This story is taken from The Great Controversy, chapter 14. God has had men and women in every generation who were not afraid to stand up against wrong and speak for Him. John Wesley and his younger brother Charles were that kind of people. They were known for their humbleness, kindness in helping others, and for their godly life. They were destined to have many hardships in their lives, but because of their missionary spirit, they were able to do great things for God. God blessed them, and eventually they became some of the best-known religious reformers of their time. The boys were born in the early 1700s to a family with 19 children. Their mother and father believed that education was very important and taught the children to read as soon as they could walk and talk. Their parents were very strict and insisted that their children all learn to read and write both Greek and Latin. Every day before lunch and every night before bed, John's mother would ask questions of each child about what they had studied that day. While just a boy of 5, John almost died in a fire that burned their house down. The parents managed to get all the children out of the house except John. However, just before the roof collapsed, a church member standing on the neighbor's shoulders lifted him through a second-story window. This amazing rescue made John later feel that God had saved him for a purpose in life. As young men, John and Charles were ordained to be ministers. One of their first assignments was to go to America as missionaries in the Georgia colony. On board the ship to America, they were impressed with a group of German Moravians. Then suddenly a storm came up. The sea was so violent that it washed over the decks, split the mainsail in pieces, and poured down the ship's hold. Everyone on board was terribly frightened. Most screamed out in terror, but not the Moravians. They were calm and had the peace of heaven on their faces. None of them looked as if they were afraid to die, not even the children. In America, the Westley brothers stayed with the Moravians for a while in Savannah, Georgia. They noticed that they were very simple people. Their worship style was solemn and yet deeply spiritual. Their services were nothing like the cold, lifeless services held in the formal Church of England back home. On the return trip to England, a Moravian preacher helped John understand the great truths of the Bible better. He helped him to see there is nothing anyone can do to save himself, and that only through Jesus can we receive salvation. This was a wonderful discovery for John, who had been raised to believe that the more good things one did, the more holier he became. When John realized that he needed to do was just pray, and then Jesus would forgive him of every sin, his life was changed forever. John's heart burned with a desire to spread the good news of what he had learned. God's grace was free! Everywhere he went, he preached the simple story of Jesus' love and His great sacrifice on the cross. Thousands soon learned that John preached such as no one else in England. Hundreds of people would pack the churches where he came to speak. Other preachers caught the fire of John's message and began to preach this message in their churches too. Few of them agreed on every doctrine taught in the Bible, but the Spirit of God inspired them to lead others to Jesus. John and Charles formed a holy club because they believed that living pure lives was the most important thing to God. They met every morning from 6 to 9 for prayer and Bible study. On Wednesdays and Friday, they fasted until 3 in the afternoon. Because of their unusual methods of study and simple living, some began calling them Methodists. Eventually, their church organization became known by that name. The two brothers had no wish to start a new church group. They just wanted people to serve God and worship Him as the Bible had told them that they should. They didn't think that the strict, formal ceremonies of the official Church of England were a blessing to people. During the Protestant Reformation in England, God had set the people of England free from the chains of spiritual darkness laid on them by the Church of Rome. Unfortunately, the churches had almost lost sight of what Martin Luther and the other reformers had taught them just 2 centuries before. But this was all about to change. God was leading a religious revival in England, and the Wesley brothers were going to be a part of it.
Let's pray. Dear Jesus, help me to love you and serve you as faithfully as John and Charles Westley did. Amen.
How old was John when he almost died in a fire? That's right! 5! You're so smart! What was the name of the German religious group that John traveled with on a ship to America? That's right! Moravians! Great! Thanks for listening. Bye-bye!